hidden in plain sight. The showroom. He stepped into the gleaming showroom, a world of glass and chrome that reflected his every move. Rows of luxury cars stretched out before him, each vehicle glowing under the bright showroom lights. The scent of polished leather and fresh upholstery hung in the air. In his worn, torn clothes, he looked wildly out of place amid the opulence, but he held his head high as he walked along the tiled floor. Despite the stares from a few salespeople in crisp suits, the man kept a quiet dignity about him. A well-dressed woman browsed near a sleek red sports car not far away. Draped in a tailored ivory pantsuit and adorned with elegant jewelry, she exuded an aura of wealth and confidence. Her designer heels clicked sharply on the spotless marble floor as she moved. She noticed the ragged-looking stranger almost immediately. Her perfectly sculpted eyebrows arched in disbelief as she watched him gently run his hand along the fender of a midnight blue luxury sedan. How odd, she thought, to see someone like him in a place like this. The man's fingers traced the car's polished curves with reverence. For a brief moment, the harshness of the world outside fell away, and he allowed himself to admire the craftsmanship without judgment. In the reflection of the car's side window, he could see himself, a lean figure in a faded hoodie and torn jeans, eyes that held a spark of longing. It had been a long time since he'd been this close to a car so beautiful. A faint smile tugged at the corner of his lips. But the woman's stare bore into him, shattering his private moment. She narrowed her eyes, her lips pursing in distaste. The stranger's presence in this palace of wealth felt to her like an intrusion, an unwelcome blemish on a perfect picture. Surely, he did not intend to buy anything here. She glanced around, expecting the staff to intervene, but they hesitated, uncertain of how to handle the situation. After all, he wasn't doing anything wrong, just looking. Yet the woman's discomfort swelled with each passing second he remained. Finally, unable to tolerate it further, the woman strode toward him with purpose. A salesman half extended a hand as if to stop her, then thought better of it. All eyes in the dealership discreetly followed her as she approached the man. Her voice rang out, cutting through the soft background music and murmur of polite conversation. "Excuse me," she said sharply, her tone dripping with condescension. "What do you think you're doing?" The confrontation. The man turned and faced her. Up close, the woman's expression was even more disdainful, as if she smelled something foul. He met her eye calmly. "I'm just looking at this car," he replied, voice steady and polite. He gently patted the car's smooth exterior. "It's a beautiful model. The craftsmanship is impressive." She blinked, taken aback for a moment that he had the audacity to answer so casually. Her eyes flicked over him from head to toe, the threadbare hoodie, the mud-stained sneakers, the worn knees of his jeans. "Looking, are you?" she repeated icily. "People buy cars here. They don't just loiter and touch them with dirty hands." Her gaze dropped pointedly to his fingers still resting on the fender. Slowly, the man lifted his hand away from the car, as if not to provoke her further. He could feel heat rising in his cheeks, a mix of embarrassment and simmering anger at her assumption. Taking a breath, he replied evenly, "I'm sorry if I disturbed you. I have every right to be here, same as you." A small crowd was beginning to form at a respectful distance, drawn by the woman's raised voice. Two salesmen hovered nearby, exchanging anxious glances but unsure how to intervene. The dealership's security guard, a stocky man in a crisp uniform, took a few steps closer, watching the exchange carefully. The woman let out a sharp, humorless laugh. "Right to be here," she echoed. "Dressed like that? Do you even know what kind of place this is?" She motioned around at the pristine showroom. "These cars cost more than what most people make in a year. You can't possibly be thinking of buying one." Her tone made it clear she found the idea absurd. The man's jaw tightened. He slid his hands into his pockets to hide the clench of his fists. In his mind, he reminded himself to stay calm, to keep his dignity. He'd faced far worse than a rude stranger's words. "You might be surprised what I can afford," he said quietly, eyes steady on hers. She narrowed her eyes at that, taking his comment almost as a challenge. How dare the shabby-looking nobody speak back to her with such confidence? "Oh, really?" she scoffed. "I suppose you've got a few $100,000 stashed in those ratty jeans, hmm?" She crossed her arms, nails perfectly manicured and gleaming under the lights, fingers tapping impatiently against her arm. A few onlookers murmured. One whispered to another, and a ripple of awkwardness passed through the small crowd. Some looked at the man with pity, others with suspicion, as if expecting him to lash out. The sales staff remained on the sidelines, caught between the potential customer in designer attire and the disheveled man causing a scene. He felt a flush creep up his neck. He hated that all eyes were on him now, judging. But he forced himself not to look away from the woman. Whether I can afford it or not is my business, he said, maintaining an even tone though each word felt measured to contain his irritation. I'm just here to admire the cars, same as anyone. I haven't done anything wrong. Not yet, the woman snapped, her voice rising. But people like you, you're up to no good just by being here. Probably planning to ask for money, or worse. She cast a disgusted glance at a stain on his sleeve, imagining all sorts of unsavory scenarios. In her mind, it was inconceivable that a well-to-do individual would dress like he did. Therefore, he must be destitute, a vagrant, perhaps even mentally unstable or a criminal. At that, the man's temper nearly slipped. A memory flickered at the edge of his mind, the echo of other words, from long ago, equally cruel. He pushed it aside and spoke firmly, I am not asking anyone for money. And I'm certainly not here to cause trouble. The security guard stepped closer now, drawn by the increasingly heated tone. Is everything all right here? The guard asked carefully, eyes darting between the furious woman and the calm but tense man. The woman turned to the guard, relief and triumph in her eyes, as if reinforcements had arrived. No, everything is not all right, she declared, stabbing a finger in the direction of the man. This person is bothering me. He clearly doesn't belong here. I want him out. The guard looked the man up and down, noting his shabby clothes. He then glanced at the woman's expensive attire and the way she held herself with authority. He hesitated, uncertain. Ma'am, has he threatened you or anyone? He asked. Not yet, she replied tartly. But look at him. I feel unsafe with him around these high-value vehicles. Who knows what he might do? She spoke as if the man were not standing right there beside her, as if he were some unpredictable animal to be handled. A knot of anger formed in the man's chest, and this time it brought with it an unwanted recollection, a different showroom, years ago, and a younger version of himself facing the same prejudice. Escalation. His mind was no longer in the present for a heartbeat. It carried him back in time to another day, another showroom with gleaming floors and pricey cars, a memory seared into him. He was younger then, not much more than a kid, standing nervously in a small dealership on the other side of town. His clothes were tidy but inexpensive, a plain shirt and old sneakers. He had walked 5 miles to get there, heart pounding with hope that maybe, just maybe, he could trade in his beat-up old sedan for something better. How bright-eyed and naive he had been, cradling a dream he could barely afford. Can I help you? A salesman had asked, but not kindly. The man was middle-aged with a thin mustache, adjusting his tie as he looked the young stranger up and down. There was no warmth in his eyes, only impatience. The young man, a young version of the scruffy stranger now in the luxury showroom, had offered a polite smile. I'm interested in that car, he had said, pointing to a used compact car in the corner. It was nothing compared to the gleaming sports models around it, but it was something he'd saved up for, dollar by dollar. The salesman's lip curled. That one? It's quite expensive, he said flatly. Do you have a budget in mind? The youth had named a figure, all the money he had managed to scrape together over 2 years. It wasn't much. The salesman's polite veneer cracked entirely. A disdainful chuckle escaped him. With that amount, you should probably look elsewhere. We don't have anything for asterisk. He had paused, eyes flicking over the young man's cheap clothes, for people on a shoestring budget. Humiliation burned the young man's face. I understand. Maybe I could test drive it? No, the salesman interrupted coldly. No sense in that. We both know you're not buying today. He stepped away as if to dismiss the boy entirely, then added over his shoulder, come back when you can actually afford it. The words had hit like a slap. A couple browsing nearby had heard and smirked in the young man's direction, sharing in the ridicule. The young man had left that dealership with shoulders hunched and eyes stinging, vowing never to forget how he was treated. Asterisk. With a blink, the vivid memory faded, and the present rushed back in. The wealthy woman's tirade was still in full force, her voice strident. Are you listening? I said I want you out now, she was saying as the guard hovered uncertainly by the man's side. The man's hands were no longer in his pockets. He had pulled them out, his fingers now relaxed at his sides. The flash of painful remembrance had hardened something within him. He straightened to his full height, meeting the woman's glare not with anger, but with a cool, collected resolve. Ma'am, the security guard ventured quietly to the woman. Perhaps we should call the manager to handle. I don't need a manager to handle this, she snapped, cutting him off. It's very simple. Remove this vagrant from the premises immediately. She pointed imperiously toward the glass doors. The guard reached out tentatively toward the man's elbow, duty warring with doubt on his face. Sir, he said in a low tone, almost apologetic. Maybe you should come with me. We can sort this out outside. The man locked eyes with the guard, and though his expression remained calm, there was an authority in his gaze that hadn't been there before. I'm not leaving, he said firmly. Not yet. The woman's eyebrows shot up. She was clearly not used to being defied, especially not by someone she deemed inferior. How dare you, she hissed. You think you can just stand there and disobey? I will have you thrown out. He felt his heart thudding in his chest, but his face showed remarkable calm. I told you, I have done nothing wrong, he repeated, voice level but now carrying an unmistakable weight. The guard's hand hovered uncertainly, not quite touching him. The man did not move to flee or cower. He simply stood, like an immovable pillar. There was something different in his demeanor that gave the guard pause. Across the showroom, the glass door to the manager's office opened and a figure emerged, drawn by the commotion. It was the dealership's general manager, a tall, silver-haired gentleman in a tailored suit. He approached briskly, concern etched on his face. What seems to be the problem here? He asked, eyeing the scene. A wealthy customer livid with anger, a security guard frozen in indecision, and a stranger in tattered clothing standing resolutely with his chin lifted. Oh, thank goodness, the woman exclaimed as the manager arrived. Are you the manager? Good. I have been harassed by this man. I've asked security to remove him, but they're doing nothing. The manager raised his palms in a calming gesture. Ma'am, I'm sorry you're upset. Harassment, you say? What has he done exactly? He looked between her and the man, trying to piece together the situation. She threw her hands up in exasperation. He's loitering, touching the cars, and he has been incredibly rude to me, she lied, her voice theatrical with indignation. Just look at him. This is a luxury establishment. It's outrageous that someone like him is allowed to wander and off the street and bother paying customers. The man opened his mouth to protest that he had not been rude at all. In fact, she had accosted him, but he caught the manager's eye. There was a flicker of recognition there. The manager was studying the man's face closely, his brow furrowing as though trying to recall something important. Sir, the manager said slowly, addressing the man in rags, have we met before? The woman looked between them, baffled by the manager's almost respectful tone toward this nobody. The cluster of onlookers pressed in just a little closer, sensing a turning point. Phones were out now. A couple of people had started recording the incident, unwilling to miss a dramatic moment. The man in torn clothes simply gave the manager a faint, knowing smile. Perhaps we have, he replied softly. There was a hint of warmth and trust in the way he spoke to the older gentleman, a stark contrast to the cold civility he had shown the woman. The manager's eyes widened as at last he placed the familiar face beneath the scruffy facial hair and baseball cap. A rush of realization changed the manager's expression from confusion to astonishment. It was time. Before the stunned woman could bark another command, the man squared his shoulders and prepared to finally reveal the truth. The revelation. A hush fell over the showroom. The man in the torn hoodie took a deep breath and slowly removed the faded baseball cap from his head. As he did, the remaining disguise of scruff and shadow fell away from his face under the bright lights. Gasps rippled through the crowd. My name is Will Smith, he said, voice clear and strong, carrying across the hushed showroom. He stood tall and unmistakable now. In an instant, the scruffy stranger was replaced by a figure many recognized, the famous actor and, as only a few in the company knew, the principal owner of this very dealership franchise. The woman's jaw dropped. Her eyes widened in disbelief as she stared at the man she had just derided. At first, she opened her mouth but no sound came out, as if her brain refused to connect the ragged appearance with the Hollywood icon. A couple of onlookers gasped louder. One exclaimed, "Oh my God, it is Will Smith," and quickly stifled themselves. Phones that had been recording were in hands, capturing every second of her public embarrassment. The manager stepped forward quickly, his demeanor now deferential. "Mr. Smith," he said, inclining his head in respect. "I'm so sorry. We had no idea it was you." Will gave the manager a small, appreciative nod but kept his focus on the woman. She was as still as a marble statue, color draining from her face. This moment, he knew, was one she would remember for a very long time. She finally managed to croak out. "Why, him." Her polished confidence had evaporated, replaced by trembling confusion. She looked around wildly as if hoping someone would tell her this was a prank or a mistake. "Yes," Will answered, his voice cool but edged with the pent-up emotion of the last few minutes. "It's me." He met her eyes, and in his gaze was not the anger she might have expected, but something that made her feel even smaller, pity, and disappointment. The woman's lips quivered. "Mr. Smith, I didn't. I mean, if I had known," she stammered, words tumbling out in a desperate rush. He held up a hand, stopping her apology in its tracks. The simple, calm gesture silenced her more effectively than any shout. The entire dealership seemed to hold its breath. Even the cars, gleaming and silent, seemed to be listening. "If you had known I was me, you would have treated me differently. Isn't that right?" Will said quietly. There was no malice in his tone, just a grave sincerity that pressed on the air. The woman opened her mouth, but he continued before she could respond. "But you didn't know. To you, I was just a man in shabby clothes. And based on that, you assumed I was worthless, a criminal, someone not even deserving of basic respect." I'm sorry," she whispered, tears of shame forming in the corners of her eyes. You thought I had no money, no power, and so I had no worth," he finished for her, his voice rising for the first time, not in anger but in passionate conviction so that everyone could hear. "You judged me by my appearance. You were ready to have me thrown out of here like garbage. You even lied that I harassed you." He shook his head slowly, the disappointment evident. "All because of what?" "Because I didn't fit your idea of who belongs in the showroom." Her face crumpled as a tear slid down her cheek, ruining a streak of mascara. It was a mistake," she managed. Her arrogance collapsed into misery. "I've never been so wrong. Please, Will's expression remained firm. "Yes, you were wrong." He motioned around at the other onlookers. "And now everyone here has seen just how wrong you were. I hope you think about this moment the next time you decide to judge someone. A person's dignity isn't tied to a price tag or a designer suit. Every single person deserves respect, whether they're wearing a $5,000 dress or torn jeans." The crowd of employees and customers watched silently, many nodding in agreement. Some had their hands over their mouths in shock. Others looked at the woman with open disapproval. The security guard stood aside now, his posture straight, clearly aligning himself with his true employer. The woman looked around and saw nothing but faces full of judgment and disappointment directed at her. She wished the floor would open up and swallow her whole. Will took a step closer to her, and she flinched slightly, as if expecting retribution. But he simply looked at her, this woman who moments ago had seemed so high and mighty. "You wanted to throw me out of my own dealership," he said softly, for her ears alone although others could hear. "You assumed I didn't belong here. The irony is, I built this place. And people like you. I'm not so sure you belong here." Her eyes squeezed shut at that, another tear falling. "I'm so sorry, Mr. Smith," she repeated, voice wavering. "I've learned my lesson, I swear. I didn't know." He let silence hang for a heartbeat, then gave a small nod. "I believe you are sorry. Sorry that you were exposed," he replied, unwavering. The words struck like a blow. She winced. For a moment, he simply regarded her. He felt no triumph in reducing her to tears. If anything, he felt a sad emptiness at how often he had seen this kind of behavior in the world. "Please," she begged softly, "please don't ruin my life over this." Perhaps she imagined repercussions beyond this room, that the video being taken would find its way online, that her face and name would become synonymous with shallow prejudice. Fear flashed in her eyes. Will paused, considering her plea. He wasn't cruel. He had no intention of ruining anyone's life today, only of teaching a lesson. "No one here is going to hurt you or do anything to you," he said evenly. "But the damage you've done is your own doing. I think it's best you leave now." The manager stepped forward as if on cue. His voice was cool and professional. "Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to exit the dealership now," he said. Where before he might have bent over backwards to please her, now his tone held no deference. The woman opened her mouth, perhaps to protest or plead further, but looking at Will's implacable face in the ring of onlookers, she seemed to think better of it. Shoulders slumped and face burning with shame, she fumbled for her purse that she had dropped in her shock. A young salesman, who earlier hadn't dared intervene, now stooped gallantly to pick it up and hand it to her. She accepted it with a mumbled thanks, avoiding everyone's eyes. As she turned to go, Will spoke one last time, gently, stopping her in her tracks. "I truly hope this experience teaches you something," he said. "Next time, think twice before you judge someone by their appearance. You might not get a second chance to find out who they really are." The woman paused, briefly meeting his gaze. Her face was etched with regret. With a final whisper, "I'm sorry," she clutched her purse to her chest and hurried toward the exit. The crowd parted for her, and she fled through the glass doors into the daylight, wiping at her tears with a trembling hand. Aftermath. A collective exhale seemed to pass through the showroom once the doors closed behind the chastened woman. The tension that had gripped everyone slowly released. A few customers and bystanders, still reeling from what they'd witnessed, began to clap softly, the sound growing for a moment in a show of respect and agreement. One by one, the onlookers dispersed, murmuring among themselves about the dramatic turn of events. Some cast lingering, amazed glances at Will as they went back to browsing the cars, the story of what happened already being whispered excitedly among them. The security guard stepped forward first, straightening his uniform with a remorseful expression. "Mr. Smith," he began, voice low. "I'm sorry. I was just trying to do my job, but I should not have jumped to conclusions either." He looked genuinely chastened, recalling how he nearly escorted his own boss out based on a snap judgment. Will regarded the guard kindly. "I understand. You were in a difficult position," he replied. "Just remember, treat everyone calmly and fairly. If someone isn't causing trouble, they deserve the benefit of the doubt, no matter how they look." "All right." The guard nodded earnestly. "Yes, sir." "Understood." The manager was next to approach, wringing his hand slightly. "Sir, I apologize on behalf of the dealership. This was terribly embarrassing. I assure you we don't normally allow our customers to be mistreated. We had no idea." Will raised a hand gently, much as he had to silence the woman earlier, but with a reassuring smile this time. "It's all right. I know this wasn't your fault. And as I recall, you did come out as soon as you realized something was wrong." He then surveyed the remaining staff, the salespeople and other employees who were gathered, looking humbled and attentive. "What matters is that we all learn from this. I include myself in that," he said. "I wanted to see how people would react to someone who didn't look wealthy walking in here. Unfortunately, it played out just as I feared. Let's use this as a lesson. No one who walks through those doors should ever be made to feel the way I was made to feel today." "Agreed." A chorus of "yes, sir," and nodding heads answered him. Some employees looked particularly moved, perhaps imagining times they might have misjudged someone themselves. The elderly couple who had been browsing earlier approached timidly. The husband gave a little bow of his head. "Mr. Smith, that was quite something to witness. Thank you for standing up to that unpleasantness. It's a lesson for all of us." His wife chimed in softly. "We've been long-time fans, and now we respect you even more." Will smiled warmly at them. "Thank you. I'm sorry you had to see that scene, but I'm glad if it left an impression." He shook the husband's hand and gently clasped the lady's hand in both of his, in his natural gentlemanly way, earning a flustered smile from her. As the couple departed, the young salesman who had retrieved the woman's purse lingered nearby, fidgeting. He looked about college age, likely new. Will turned to him. "You did the right thing helping her at the end," Will said, surprising the young man. The salesman flushed. I figured she'd been humiliated enough," he said quietly. "Didn't want to kick her while she was down, you know? I hope I didn't overstep." "Not at all," Will assured. "That showed empathy. Keep that up. Our customers will appreciate it, and so will I." The salesman's face lit up with relief and pride. "Yes, sir. Thank you." With the incident concluded, normalcy gradually returned to the dealership. The background music seemed a little louder now as conversations picked up again. Staff returned to assisting other customers, though they did so with a renewed sense of courtesy. A few people were still discreetly eyeing Will, some with lingering surprise, others with admiration. The manager cleared his throat. "Mr. Smith, can I get you anything? Perhaps we could discuss." Will shook his head, still smiling. "Thank you, but I'm all right for now." Actually, he glanced back at the midnight blue luxury sedan, the one that had first caught his eye. "I came here today to take a closer look at that beauty over there." He nodded toward it. The manager followed his gaze and chuckled, recovering some of his ease. "Ah, an excellent choice. One of our finest models. Shall I have it prepped for a test drive?" "That would be great," Will said. He began walking back toward the car, the manager hurrying happily alongside to make arrangements. As he passed by the spot where the confrontation had occurred, Will's eyes fell on the gleaming marble floor, now empty, as if the drama of moments ago were just a strange dream. He thought of the flash of memory that had overtaken him, of the young man he once was, leaving a dealership humiliated and hurt. Today had been different. Today, he had been able to stand up not just for himself, but for anyone who'd ever been looked down upon unfairly. He gently ran his hand over the fender of the midnight blue sedan once more, the same way he had when he was just an anonymous visitor. Only now, he did so openly, without anyone yelling at him to stop. In the glossy reflection, he saw his face, no longer hidden, calm and content. A faint smile formed on his lips as he heard the engine of the car roar to life, ready for him to take it for a spin. Justice had been served in that showroom, and a valuable lesson had been laid bare for all. With one last glance toward the doors where the woman had vanished, Will Smith slid into the driver's seat of the luxury car. Outside, the sun was shining brightly. He could see through the dealership's glass wall that the woman was long gone, but a few pedestrians stood near the entrance, looking in curiously, perhaps having heard whispers of what happened. Life would carry on, and so would the lesson of this day. Will put on his seatbelt as the manager opened the showroom doors for the test drive. He took a deep breath, a sense of satisfaction washing over him. Not the gloating kind, but the kind that comes from knowing some good may come from an unfortunate encounter. As the car rolled forward, Will Smith drove out of the showroom into the daylight. He wasn't just driving a luxury car. He was driving away with a story, one of dignity upheld and prejudice confronted, a story that everyone present, and perhaps many more who would see the recording, would remember for a long time.